Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics for our latest post covering finance and property news. It's another Monday again, and of course Edwin's back for another rant. And Edwin, we've got so much to talk about tonight. It's crazy out there.
Well, it is crazy, but the craziest thing that I heard over the weekend, Martin, was the fact that I believe, well, Dusty tells me that you got a 50% pay rise or something, or hold on a minute. Dusty wants to have a word with me. What is it? Oh, sorry, no, it's Prince Charles. Prince Charles I thought she said, I must have been half asleep. I thought she said Martin got a 50% pay rise. Or was it a $50 million pay rise? Something like
I
50
wish.
million pounds.
Yeah. How the other half live, or how the other few live. It's very interesting that in the UK, the new Prime Minister came back off holiday and gave a speech in the Rose Garden, which is outside Number 10. And he basically said, it's going to get tougher before it's going to get better. He was really gloomy about the state of the economy and the state of this and the state of that. Taxes will have to go up. It was like, that's a bit different from what he said before the election. But, it's a very interesting comparison between that and what's going on in the US with Kamala and, the joy and the enthusiasm that she's trying to instill over there. We have no joy here in the UK at the moment. It's all grey. We're moving into autumn. And the Prime Minister is saying it's going to get tougher before it's going to get better. At least I think he's being a bit more honest than the politicians down there in Australia, because according to them, everything's absolutely fine.
Look, everything seems to be fine. But is it, if you look at what's happening, the parallels between England, the States and in Australia, and you look at the immigration policies across some of the other Western nations as well. It's not so much about productivity. Obviously, that's one way to fix the mess, is to become more industrious and more productive. Or the other option, as we spoke last week and the week before, is pull the immigration lever, bring in more people. So we've unfortunately your neck of the woods, my backyard, and others have chosen the easy pathway, because it is an easy pathway, and that's what we're going to be talking about later today as well, as the WeChat chatterers are very hot to trot on their conversations with what they see and what they foresee, which will also incorporate part of the Melbourne market, because that's seems to be making a lot of news, although you and I have been talking about it for over 18 months. But look, at the end of the day, Martin, who said you can't make mud cakes and not eat them, right? Because that's what they want to feed us. That's what the politicians want to feed us. They want to feed us. That's because I don't want to say the word caca. Cakes made out of caca, but that's what they want to feed us. And it's politicians that are wet around the ears that are putting out all these policies without really doing the research. But then, do you blame the politicians, or do you really blame the reporters in the mainstream media, the so-called property reporters, with regard to not pulling them up on some of the things? So it's stuff that they talk about. It's things that we've already got in place, and I refer first cab off the rank to the announcement by the Greens, centered around Max, the mouthpiece for housing and that, and what he proposes to do to put in place another committee, another group, another organization of 1,000 people. That would, it would cost $200 million. I would say that would be for starters per annum. Obviously, it's not coming out of their coffers. It's going to come out of the taxpayers' coffers. But, did somebody tell Max that there's a department called Fair Trade in New South Wales, and there's NCAT, and they've got all the points that he talks about that he wants to implement with regard to assisting people with the rental market and assisting the tenants that are frustrated by what the shenanigans that property managers get up to. They're already at play. The only thing is that the premiers don't have the balls and don't want to fund fair trade in New South Wales in our state to put on more officers out there to really to sharpen their teeth and go all out. The only thing that I read in that article that was of substance, apart from the heading, which I thought was good, was the pain that Max wants to bring in. And I've been saying this for over 2 decades, that the penalties, that the punishment should be harsher with regard to how property managers take advantage of tenants. But it's only now that they because of TikTok and and other people on TikTok and on X, other social media influencers that talk about the bad state of affairs of the housing and rentals. That they've created this buzz. But I've been talking about this for over 2 decades, but if only they would look at what's already at play, what's already in place, and fund it and have better standing, or give them a better what would you want to call it, a bigger license, or a bigger allow them to carry a bigger stick to police the real estate agencies and the property management teams. We wouldn't be having these conversations. But it's only as you also shared on your video, not today or yesterday. You also shared about things that are already in place. It's not new news. It's really how I can buy votes. We got an election coming up in Queensland, and you talk about how the gifts that are being dished out there, and now we've got proposals by the Greens here to. In my view, it's really just simply to buy votes. But let's not talk about the elephant in the room, right? Let's not talk about the fact that, as I said, we've already got this a department called Fair Trade in New South Wales and NCAT, which provide all these support structures, and the fact that we can already obtain, renters can obtain 5-year leases. There's a procedure already at play to be able to obtain a 5-year lease term, which we've spoken about in the show a couple of years ago. But the biggest elephant in the room is the current immigration policies. We don't want to discuss that.
No, very good point. And it is quite interesting, isn't it, how the political positioning is now playing out. And just going back to that article, the Greens have their eyes firmly focused on winning over renters at the next election, with a new policy aimed at giving tenants more power in resolving disputes with their landlords. And as you say, there are already existing infrastructure in place in terms of committees and processes around that. But the Greens are very focused on getting those rental sector people to vote Green. And of course, the major parties are actually very much smelling in many people's minds at the moment. And in fact, quite a few people are looking for alternative options. And so it does make, I guess, some political sense to try and position this. But as you say, practically speaking, there's no real difference, because there are already institutions in place trying to do some of this. And, the 1/3 of households who rent, of course, are really up against it. And it is worth just reflecting on the real pressures that households have. One of the interesting observations on that, and I've run my latest stress analysis again, is that not everybody's in the same boat. There are still some people who are relatively, feeling okay about it. But if you look at the surveys, then the surveys will say that there are price concerns very significantly out there. A lot of people are really struggling. And You've got the Chalmers discount on electricity, $300. You've got the Queensland $1,000, $400 in WA. Money going always to try and buy people's votes, I suspect, more than anything else. But it doesn't really help. And of course, that leads to an interesting discussion about, where things are shaping up. But just take a step back, Edwin, and ask the question, why are we where we are in terms of the pressures? And this chart from the OECD really just underscores it. The reason we're in such deep doo-doo in Australia, as well as the high house prices and high rents and the high migration, is that disposable income has taken a massive hit over the last decade or so. And relative to other places, we've got the world record for falling disposable incomes in real terms. And for me, what you've got to peel back here is peel back the onion and say, what are the political strategies that have been used over the last decade or so? And that is to bear down on real wages, increase the tax take, of course, so disposable income is continuing to fall, pump high migration, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, and of course, still talk property up and still allow the banks to lend big and all of those things, and then offer incentives for first-home buyers and other people to get back in the market. And it's very interesting. I don't know whether you saw Andrew Bragg was on Insiders over the weekend. He's the senator in the Liberal Party that's running the housing opposition story at the moment, and he was advocating for greater access to superannuation, the ability to be able to effectively switch some of that money that the Labor government's created around this future investment fund and throw it directly at property. And I'm thinking, all of this is just political spin. And as you say, it's all been done before. It's not really anything new. And meantime, of course, whilst the government is tightening the dial on the immigration around students, so 270,000 next year rather than more than 500,000 the year before. And of course, did you notice how the universities were absolutely howling with pain and anguish because suddenly their wonderful flows of income are being squeezed? The truth is, of course, that other migrants are still coming in, and the truth is that migration is still pumping house prices. So unfortunately, we're going round and round this doom loop with a lot of political spin, a lot of political posturing, a lot of announcements, as we've said before, but no substance.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing. And a lot of people don't understand it. They get it, or in some cases with some of the young voters, they haven't lived it. And as I say, I've been advocating for a lot of changes with regard to the property management side of things. It goes far back when Jennifer Duke, former Domain reporter, was with Property Observer and other smaller publications. As we would discuss the same issues that have been talked about now, or they want to change. So it's been over 2 decades, and yet they're bringing policy, regulations, legislation, think tanks, committees, this course, that course. And as I say, you bring in one new regulation or one new legislate something new, and the housing bodies, the housing bodies, they're the first ones that obviously look after the real estate agencies. They're the first ones to look at how they can circumvent these 6 ways to Sunday, and that's a sad thing. That is the sad thing, and because the regulators themselves don't have the teeth, they're just being basically they've got no teeth. There's no real bite. The only thing of substance, as referring back to that article, was the position that some do want to take, and that is to see greater fines in prosecution on repeat offenders, And I dare say that the unfortunate thing is, Martin, is a lot of these major franchise groups, where a lot of the agents and even independent agents come from, they teach you how to circumvent the regulations and the legislation that is being put in place. That's, I mean, yeah, we've got the receipts, as they say. We've got the receipts. We've sat in the courses. I know a lawyer that's got an old LJ Hooker manual that would teach you how to underquote and stuff like that. I mean, this is stuff that's out there that we've seen it. I've got snippets of of some of the people that we referred to on previous occasions in their training academies, teaching real estate agents on how to, basically how to buy a listing, as we call it in the industry, and then rip the rug from underneath the vendors once they get the listing and demoralize them and sell it for a lot less than what they told the vendors they were going to get. I mean, we've got it all. We've got all the receipts. But until you've got regulators and until you've got people of substance in those positions to really do something about it and bring about change, nothing's going to happen. That's the unfortunate thing. Nothing's going to happen because the political parties of both persuasions, they take the easy route. It's not about productivity. It's not about change. It's about ease. And that's the only way I can put it.
No, I think you make a good point there, Edwin. And, there are substantive things that could be done, but that would be uncomfortable. If they really did dial back the migration to realistic levels, that would be quite helpful. And the other one, of course, the really big one would be the reserve of gas, because, of course, Australians are paying 5 times what they should be paying, particularly down the East Coast for gas at the moment. And that then has a significant onflow in terms of electricity prices. Now, there are policies that could be actually implemented in those 2 areas that would quite help. And then the other one I think that's worth just thinking about, which is the whole question of the way that the mortgage market works at the moment. Because what I'm seeing in my data is that the amount of lending that's going on at the moment is continuing to be very strong. So there was another uptick over the last month. And guess what? Investors are still piling in some areas, but not others. And the context of all of this, just to be clear, is that we have interest rates at 4.35%, which are significantly lower than in New Zealand or in the US or even the UK or the Eurozone. And so the question, of course, on everyone's lips for some time has been, when is the RBA going to cut? And there was an interesting article at the weekend that came out that said, even if the US does, the RBA can't and won't. That's Hauser, the deputy governor, and that's actually that show that I mentioned earlier on, why rate cuts won't come soon to Australia. And I went through some of the issues. And it's interesting how some other journalists have been picking this up. So Christopher Joy has written about the fact that getting inflation under control is a real problem. It's quite unusual for it to be pulled into control without creating a recession. You've also got this contention between the RBA and the government. So effectively, the Treasury is pretty much turned on the Reserve Bank, saying the RBA is smashing the nation because they're keeping rates high, when in fact, of course, the reason that they're keeping rates high is because inflation is too high. Why is inflation too high? Well, some of those government policies are actually inflationary. And, the truth is, of course, that growth is likely to slump. And a rate cut is unlikely. Oh, by the way, of course, though, Edwin, the income support lifts are not inflationary, according to the government. And that's probably true to an extent, insofar that many people will be receiving a little bit of an uplift in terms of their fortnightly social security payments and Commonwealth rental assistance. That will help at the margin. But nevertheless, the real pressure on inflation is there, and I have real doubts as to whether the government really is putting downward pressure on inflation. I think that what they're doing at the moment is inflationary. And by the way, also, ex-staffer at the RBA, John Simon, said that the problem with interest rates not being raised high enough is that essentially it's not going to drive inflation, and that's why inflation is going to stay longer for longer. And all of that explains some of the things we've been seeing recently, when effectively we're starting now to see some of the early signs of the property market in some places beginning to move in a slightly different trajectory from what we'd seen previously. And I think it does come back to the fact that we've got this policy gap where interest rates weren't taken high enough soon enough by the RBA. We've got the government still throwing a lot of money, taxpayers' money, of course, money at people. And some of those, particularly at the state level, are to bribe people at the upcoming elections. But the underlying root cause issues are not being really tackled. And that, for me, is a really, really big issue. And, the bottom line is simply that we are going to see some wobbles in some places. Now, did you see the latest data? This is the home price data for the end of August from CoreLogic. And, the headline was, well, national dwelling values are up 0.5%. But if you actually look at it carefully, you can see there that there was a fall again in Melbourne. There was a fall in Hobart again. There was a fall in Darwin again. And there was a fall in Canberra. But of course, Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane are the ones effectively driving the market. Now, you could argue that there are some interesting differences in those markets. Sydney, 0.3% on average. So it's not really as buoyant across the country as perhaps the original headlines were there. But again, you've got to come from that sort of national view or the global view to local views, because there are some big differences. So no policy change. We're going to see the same old playing out. And I guess the question then is, well, what do people do in the meantime?
Well, in the meantime, they just keep on renovating, Martin. They just keep on. They stay put. They stay put, and they renovate and extend. And what can they do? What can they do with the cost of living that we're going through, and the cost to relocate? I mean, there's a huge cost. You've got it's effectively a 5% charge of the value of value of a property to get in. So not counting all the other costs, removalists, marketing, education in terms of changeover for education and commuting. I mean, it's a huge cost. Even if you have to downsize, or if you have to move further out in order to afford when I say afford, that roof over your head, that gives you that sense of security, because of the lack of supply and the lack of rentals that we're seeing, the squeeze on rentals. And as the population, the state's population, the city population keeps on growing, both from international migration as well as state migration, and also other aspects with regards to government policy around education and what it's being taught or not taught at schools. And this is what's driving a lot of the markets. It is interesting how these but they all have a dollar figure to it, Martin. They all have a price tag on it. And I referred earlier on with, there's a huge cost in renovating, and that's only going to get more expensive as materials increase in price, and contractors aren't going to be reducing what they're getting, because once you've tasted blood, you don't want to go back to being a vegetarian, right? So once you've tasted the steak, you don't want to go back to being a vegan.
No, very, very good point. And just on the renovations, there was this article that said home renos going through the roof, and they actually were listing out there some of the costs. And of course, the costs of renovations are literally going through the roof. But of course, you've also got to ask about the quality, Edwin, haven't you, as well? And you shared this video, and it is worth just having a look. This is effectively a well, what can you say? This is a new renovation, but it's not very good quality, eh?
Well, this is unlike the showroom renovation that we showed in the previous show, right? This is a $35,000 renovation, and you only have to look at the gaps in between the floor tile and the wall tile that the tilers have left, and that's a strip drain there. What that video doesn't show is that the fall of the water, that is a shower recess area, that the fall of the water, it falls away from the strip drain. It actually falls to the other side. And this is crazy stuff, and this is what an individual in a $3 million house, got conned into accepting by his builder that this was worth $35,000. I thought otherwise. I told the people that invited me to have a look at this project. I told them otherwise. I gave them my thoughts, my opinions, and the issues of concern they would have, and this main bathroom, which is again a $35,000 renovation, sits on the second level of the property. So sooner than later, those that are sitting in the in the living room area downstairs are going to also, while somebody's having a shower in the upstairs main bathroom, they're also going to be taking a bath downstairs. So I guess that's a positive, right? That save on
water
soap,
feature.
save on water. Or you can, that's it. Or you have, if you direct the water down the wall, you've got yourself a free water feature. Water views, call it whatever you want. But this is the things that a lot of people are going to have, moving forward, are going to have to be very wary of. And this is what I say also when they're going to buy a property. These are the things that you won't pick up, and a lot of the building inspectors that agents use from before you bid, they themselves don't know. As I've said before, and no disrespect to our IT followers and subscribers to the show, but there's a lot of people that have made the transition from an IT background to becoming building and pest inspectors because it's a deregulated industry, because you can. I mean, that's a crazy thing, because it's all about putting in information in an iPad and just learning the basics, and it's which is really what for somebody that's proficient in IT and can't get a job, or they just want to work for themselves and don't want to have that stress. They become building and pest inspectors for gyms or before you bid or whatever company or an organization would like to train them. That's the nature of what we have here in New South Wales and in most of the states of around Australia. The only state that is regulated is Queensland. So this is what is out there. So when you're buying a house and you think, and you're paying over you're paying over the odds because a bathroom's been renovated, a kitchen's been renovated, and you're paying, although I say that's a $35,000 bathroom renovation, but let's say the property was for sale, you would equate the value on the emotion. You effectively that bathroom would be worth, let's say, $120,000 in the area. Because it's renovated and because there's a lot of emotion that goes to it. It's not just the cost of the renovation, but it's also the intrinsic value of the feature. It's a third bathroom, and also the emotion on top of that. So a renovated bathroom in that house, it will equal to about $120,000 to $150,000. But because it's new and shiny, it looks good. As they say, good from far from good, and this is what you get. And sooner than later, as I said to the owner of the property, regardless of what your builder says, I give it 3 to 6 months. and you will be you'll have a double shower. You'll have one upstairs and one downstairs at the same simultaneously, and that's a problem. And the costs are only increasing, and that's the state of where we are. In the economy, where we are in cost of materials, and things are only going to get worse.
Yeah, and just following on from that, of course, labour costs a very significant amount. This article showed that wages for construction workers are have tripled over the last couple of decades in Victoria and New South Wales. Interestingly, the data shows that about 40 to 45% of a total project cost is on average labour. And if you look at the rates of pay there, you can basically see a massive rise, a 199% rise in recent times. Remember that those costs feed directly into the costs of both new builds and also renovations. So what that means, Edwin, is that we are seeing people paying a lot more just to get something renovated. And of course, the latest inflation data that came out recently showed that the inflationary pressures on new builds were still sitting around 5%. And that's because of cost of materials, but also the cost of labor. So there is no way that I can see the value of prices continuing to go higher. Yes, maybe, but the price of new stuff, whether it's renovations or whether it's new, is going a lot higher. And so that's going to actually have a very significant influencing effect on what the real value of new properties are in terms of what they're actually sold in the market for. Because whilst you can argue that it's partly a market-based thing, it's also a cost-plus thing too, isn't it? And if the cost-plus are rising, that puts a floor on how prices could behave.
Yeah, so it's not based on the market trend. The price of housing in real estate, residential real estate, it's really it's almost like you're detached now from. We are detached and have been for a number of years from your typical market trend. Yep. It's really all based around policy now. It's really policy based, immigration policy, tax. All that stuff that we're seeing in Melbourne, and the different states are acting differently because of government policies, and hence the reason why we've got the mass exodus from Melbourne, and others are benefiting from that. Obviously, when I say benefiting, property owners, commercial, industrial, investors in New South Wales are starting to grow. The portfolios are starting to grow because of again the exodus from the small industries from Melbourne, jumping the border. I imagine they'll probably see some of that over in South Australia, and there will be another rise in the South Australian market because of they don't have the crazy tax policies that the Victorians have, and I mean, but they need those crazy tax policies. They need those crazy tax mandates because it costs them $15 billion to build 9 kilometres of infrastructure or something along those lines. I mean, these guys are crazy, and also the Victorians are going to be paying what they're going to be paying the $200 million over to. Who got the Commonwealth Games over in Europe somewhere? But we're going to be putting the bill. So, I mean, this is what I say. Like, it's all, our market is now really policy driven, not so much. It's not a market based on normal market trends.
No, good point, Edwin. And in fact, there was this slide which I'll put up here, showing an article that was looking at why investing in property for yield is so unappealing. And it starts out by saying, well, ending negative gearing is in the political too hard basket. But already investors in Victoria and New South Wales have been hit the hardest with new lending for property investment increased. But it was actually quite interesting that in Victoria, it's up just 9.4%. That's the highest stamp duty and among the highest land taxes in Australia. The desertion of Victoria by property investors is no surprise. This year, the tax threshold for land was dropped, a COVID-19 recovery levy was introduced, and some owners were also slugged with a land tax increase. And they had the short stay levy as well. And of course, New South Wales government is following on too. And so it's interesting, the commentary here was that with so many strong headwinds pointing to a slow and tortuous decline in property yields, many buyers will likely throw in the towel and deploy their money elsewhere rather than endure this death by 1,000 cuts, which is probably right. So it's policy driven. And of course, if you look at the investment markets, well, because of the recent good results from the latest reports, investors have flooded back into the financial markets as well. So when I work with people who actually are in the investment property game and work with them to calculate what their true investment return actually was on their property, not the sort of the Mickey Mouse property price versus rental, which is just not very useful, but the real return, more than half, nearly 60%, are actually underwater. And if you look in Victoria, that number's even higher. So there's absolutely no surprise that property investors have been deserting. Now, we've been calling this out, Edwin, for some long time. And finally now I think some others are waking up to this story because it's quite an important story. And in fact, this slide is another one. The tax grab sparks home price slide. So investors in Melbourne are selling up at the highest rate of any of our major capital cities to avoid hefty property taxes, which has led to falling prices across the city. So once again, you can see that the policy is actually driving price. So it's not supply and demand, it's policy. Wherein that, of course, means that Adelaide and Perth have passed Melbourne's home values now, with Adelaide home values for the first time on record climbing 1.4%. And of course, Perth is way up there too. So you can see here the direct linkage between government policy at the state and the federal level and what's happening to home prices. And when you actually start to realize that property prices are predominantly influenced by the policies, the political world, rather than the economic world, I think that's a really important observation.
Yeah, and this is in the aftermath of that, Martin. The unfortunate thing is watch this space. Now, you and I spoke about this some time ago. Over the last 18 months, we've been speaking about. I've been calling it out, and that is that in the short run, the renters are the ones that are going to suffer with the policy that's driving this exodus from the Melbourne market, and why they're seeing a downward shift. So I'll say that, and I'll also say this is that I believe, because it is policy driven, I believe that the downward trend it's not going to be for a very long time, because change the policy and then you will start that trend will start plateauing, and then you will get an uplift, because if it's the opposition that come in, then there'll be a state, and depending on what position the one that takes the helm takes with regards to immigration, that it could be a international immigration as well. But at the moment, with regards to government policy around taxes, and that, I put out an opinion, and that is that renters will pay more and suffer more over the next few years. We have been watching this play out on the, as we cruise the numbers on the Melbourne market, as we, and I say, change my mind, and this is where I liken where many talk about abolishing negative gearing, the abolition of the negative gearing being the silver bullet to bring about a more sustainable rental market. But is it really going to happen? Now, these tax policies that we're seeing playing out in the Melbourne market is the litmus test, as far as I'm concerned, with regards to whether or not abolishing negative gearing will play out, because I sort of liken it to the taxes and the imposts that the government are placing on investors, and the major exodus that abolishing negative gearing would create is likened onto what's happening now there. And I dare say that the unfortunate, you know, you know, what would you say? The unfortunate the ones that are going to suffer, unfortunately, are going to be the renters, and because the investors aren't going to just say, "Oh yeah, look, let's bring the prices down, let's bring the rental market." They're just going to evict the tenant or sell the property with a tenant, and if it gets cheap enough, the ones, there will be the first time buyers that come in, or others, or renters that will come in. But in the majority, Martin, there are too many things that are stopping renters, in my opinion, as we shared before on the show, as we shared last year, or even further back than last year on the show, and that is that the renters, the majority, can't afford to buy where they're renting, because of the current banking policies as well. One, secondly, they don't want to live where they want to buy, where they can buy, and where although that's there's a blanket approach where the mainstream media is saying all of Melbourne property is coming down in value, and you've got those funny websites that sound like Achu, that tell you that give you an analysis or an overview of falling asking prices. You've got this whole thing that they all lump all the markets into one, when in actual fact, a lot of the listings that have come up in the Melbourne market are once again in the fringes, where there is no infrastructure, where families don't really want to buy into because of the infra. There's no infrastructure, and the added cost on top of a mortgage. You've got transport, you've got education, you've got medical costs, because of lack of medical facilities, the travel to medical facilities. So you've got all these things that work against those that really want to get into the market. So, and I spell it out in that post. Again, I feel that policy, although the mainstream media are saying, "Oh, look, hooray, property prices are going down in Melbourne," I don't doubt it. But the unfortunate thing is, it's not really where people want to live, in the most part. In a lot of these towns, and a lot of these fringes were predominantly built up by investors, and a lot of them were the WeChat chatterers that called it quits 18 months ago.
A good point, Edwin. And it is worth just reflecting on the data. This came out quite recently, the 10 worst performing postcodes for mortgage arrears. It's interesting to notice that quite a few of those postcodes are actually on the urban fringe, where we have a lot of households under pressure. Of course, a lot of those are in my mortgage stress data set too. But we're starting now to see loan arrears rise, because people out in those areas are spending a lot more on getting around, because the infrastructure isn't there. They're having to drive a lot further. The cost of everything is just more expensive. And of course, you've got a lot of people who've got property relatively recently with big mortgages. All of those things are in play. So the truth of the matter is that these things are going to play out not over weeks, but over months and years, as we've said on previous shows. But there's an interesting question for you. If you think of what Victoria has done in recent times with its heavy-handed regulatory approach, how does it compare with, CCP in China? It feels like there's some commonality. What do you think?
Well, this is the thing. This is where Dusty is, right? She's really into this. And this is what the chatterers are really looking at this very, very closely, how it's playing out. And look, the CCP, as they say, they've been squeezing the Chinese residential up, as they call it, as Dusty says, the residential property sponge. And they're of the opinion that the CCP are not going to stop squeezing that sponge. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason why Xi and the CCP want the residential property market to keep on crumbling. apart from his beliefs, apart from his philosophical beliefs, apart from being everybody being equal, from the position that political position that he takes, but also the simple fact that since the coupling from the Western world and what's happened over the years of looking inward, and a lot of foreign investment has left China to go to Vietnam, as we've got the new kids on the block in Vietnam, as they've entered their golden era of commerce, in an industry boom. The CCP want the locals, and I say this is why they'll keep on. Dusty says that they'll keep on squeezing the sponge, the property sponges, because they want basically to squeeze the juice out of the property market, which is its liquidity, and for people to start focusing on the residential, so on the investing in more investing on the jobs or manufacturing that creates jobs. That's their focus. And what we're going to see is, through their policy, is the residential property market in the second tier cities and the third tier cities is just going to crumble. Not so much in the first tier cities, but you've got your second tier cities and your third tier cities that are going to absolutely be decimated, and which is unlike to CCP Victoria, if I can say that. I've already said it. Too bad. We're foreign and interstate investment still moving into Victoria to an extent, albeit that's met with a lot of obstacles currently. But again, it's only until policy changes that we're going to have this downward trend, is what the chatterers are saying. They're saying therefore it won't be sustainable once the policy turns or changes. There will be a bounce back in the market. Now, the interesting thing, obviously, from our point of view, is not trying to second guess when the WeChat chatters are going to jump in, because it's early days. It's a chatter, but it's a watch this space. It's stay tuned for further updates as to what what they're saying and how they're referencing what the socialistic policies that have been brought out in the Victorian arena, and correlating that or juxtaposing that with the policies over in mainland China. But unlike mainland China, they believe, the WeChat chatters believe, that this is only for a time, but our viewers and our followers will be ahead of the curve, and when they say move, they will move, and they will move in droves. But for the time, it's just a wait and see. But it was an interesting analogy that they're talking about as to how things are transpiring all around policy, rather than the natural market.
Very interesting, Edwin. And just finishing off the China angle here, there was this article which I thought was really interesting, that the China steel export surge is to stoke global trade tensions. But there was a little comment down the bottom. Only 1% of Chinese steel mills are profitable, according to MySteel. And China's steel exports are set to reach an 8-year high this year, inundating the world with low-cost supply and threatening to inflame global trade tensions. Now, that's, of course, at the time when, in fact, the imports of ore into China are actually going down. So at the moment, what they're trying to do is to effectively shift some of the stuff they've got and sell it. I think it's another interesting observation. But the thought that only 1% of steel works in China is profitable is quite a scary thought, because it's such a large proportion. And it goes right back again to the fundamental policy errors that are there, as well as in Victoria, I think. Fascinating. Now, of course, the other side of this, if you come back to Australia, with the need to try and build more, the question also is worth, I think, asking is, would you really want to live in the places that they're talking about building, right? So this was actually an article. Australia is building 1 million new homes, but you may not want to live in them. Very interesting little analysis here. And of course, it's very much in line with some of the conversations I had with some of my one-to-one conversations. People do not want to live in little dog boxes that are poorly built, poorly insulated, poorly constructed, and quite often in places where there isn't a lot of infrastructure as well. It's a fascinating question. We might be building a lot of stuff, but is it really stuff that people want to live in?
The first thing, the first point on that article, Martin, is the misinformation. Australia is building 1 million homes. I mean, really? We're building 1 million? I mean, okay, it's a headline, but it's crazy to think. But how long have we been saying this, Martin? That and we've been warning our followers and our viewers and those that are wanting to get into the property ladder. We've been warning them. Just because you can't afford a freestanding home in the area that you want to live in, don't be silly and jump into a newly built apartment. Thinking that that's going to be you're going to build equity. It's really going to burn a hole in your pocket potentially in the short term and in the long term. Specifically, if it was built by a dodgy development or a dodgy developer, and you're not going to know that unless you go and research and see what they've built and go and walk the basements of those apartment complexes before you do anything. Before you put a deposit on the one that you've done. So that you're looking at buying. So this is So I picked up that article from Tarek, put that up, and as he asked the question, but then we've been talking about this again for how long? We've been saying that that was going to be the misfortune for many, was to fall into that trap. But in terms of homes, I say, can we now have the real definition of what the politicians mean by homes? Because everything points to apartments, not homes, and this is you might call it semantics. I just simply call it smoke and mirrors. A home is a home. A home is a home surrounded by if you're Greek, concrete, or Lebanese, concrete, or if you're Italian, lots of vegetables, vegetables at the front, vegetables at the back, or if you're like me, living in the mountains, you've got chickens at the back, and you try to grow vegetables at the front. But a home is a home. You've got space in between each dwelling. But when they refer to homes, is like, as you say, is a shoebox in the air that's badly ventilated. I mean, that's not a home. We should really be defining. And the other thing is in that slide, in the first slide that you shared, they referred to the homes, but they showed two high-rise developments. So that's what they really mean. So. Well, we've lost the true meaning of what a home is. Yes, some have come back and said, "Look, Edwin, you make a home by the people that live in it, and you make it your home, a dwelling. You make it your home." But hey, what we're talking about here is the structure, and they should really talk about apartment. This is where the young Australians, young families. Older families, whatever, people that want to get into the property market, the Aussies, as we all are, we prefer the freestanding because we can't. In the 80s, you could say, okay, I'll start my run in an apartment, and then from there I'll leverage into a freestanding home in a subdivision further out west, southwest, or northwest. But you can't do that now with this new construction because it's very costly.
Well, it's very interesting, Edwin, again, in my one-to-one conversations, the number of times I've had conversations with people who bought the high rise because that's all they could afford. And they might have bought it a few years ago, maybe even before COVID, or in that period directly after. But one of the things that they say to me is they hadn't realized how noisy living in an apartment is. And, whilst, of course, they're all advertised as up to spec, et cetera, the truth is that noise travels. And noise travels, of course, through steel structures and through ceilings and through walls. And one of the biggest motivations that I find from people who've lived in that style for a period is they just want to get out. They want to get away from the noise, and they want to get effectively away of being just piled on other people all the time. And one of the other factors that I think is quite significant here is that whilst you might have double glazing and other stuff looking outside, actually noise travels not through the glass, but through the structure of the walls and the floors and the ceilings and those sorts of things. And very often, in my experience, people just had no idea what it was going to be like living in one of those noisy little boxes.
Yeah, I recall when I went to Melbourne, last time I went to Melbourne was at the end of 2019, and I met up with Robbie Barwick, and we went to some of we walked around some of the new high-rise developments, and we went into, can't remember the name of the tower that we went into, and we got taken by the salesperson to the higher levels, and it was windy outside, but you could actually inside, it was really scary. It felt like the bloody building was going to come down. It was really creepy. The noise, and as you say, traveling through the noise that would travel, it was just howling through the corridors because it may be double glazed, but that's not the point. The point is, even in some of the residential homes, as I was showing one of our clients, we got commercial glazing and framing for the windows for his renovation, and I was saying, look, this is all great, but at the end of the day, we finish it off with a silicon bead on the inside and on the outside to stop although the naked eye can't see the gap between the frame and the joints, but you can certainly feel the wind, or that's where you lose your heat, and that's where you lose the cool, the air conditioning or the heating in winter. And vice versa from the outside. That's where it comes into the properties, let alone with these high-rise developments where they don't seal the glass panels properly. So this is it. And now on top of that, then you've got obviously you've got your wet areas, your downpipes, your floor wastes and your waste coming down. So you can. Somebody flushes the toilet 3 levels up, and it all travels down, right? It's all gravity.
The mind boggles, I think. I've been in enough hotels through the years when you can literally hear when the toilet above is flush, whoosh. So it's not good. Okay, let's just quickly look at the numbers because, the trends are continuing to evolve. In Sydney last week, this is on the 26th of August, 18,099, jumped forward a week, 18,518. So once again, listings are rising. And in fact, the chart here shows that listings are ahead of where they were last year. And Edwin, I think we're going to see this sort of trend continuing ahead. It looks to me as though the rush to list is actually quite strong at the moment, which is quite fascinating. Fascinating too, this was an article that was talking about the prestige suburbs, particularly in some of the areas in Sydney and Melbourne, bargains for home buyers in high-end places where home sellers in some of the world's most prestigious areas are slashing their prices by up to $345,000 to lure those buyers. Its listings pile on before the spring selling season, according to CoreLogic. So interesting observation there.
Yeah, and if you look at if you, I gave you a snapshot of what I took on Friday, Friday evening, and we had 18,762 properties on the market on Friday. So on the Monday snapshot of that week, we had 18,099. So almost 700 new listings came on the market between on Domain between Monday and Friday, which is a high number. And obviously, yeah, because of spring, as you said, because people want to jump the queue, want to jump the spring queue, and get ahead. But the other interesting thing, Martin, is that there's a lot of sales. There's a lot of property turning over. For us, it's the buyer beware side of things. Is that it's some a lot of the markets, the city markets, the numbers of properties are turning over fairly quickly. A lot of the markets in Sydney are also not experiencing the jumping listings like others are, and the high end properties, yes, they are suffering somewhat, and they will be staying on market a lot longer, is my opinion. So we could see a catch up to 2022 numbers, fairly quickly. But as I said, you've got to be very careful as to what market you're looking into, what type of property you're looking at, because not all markets are acting the same as you said earlier on. But yeah, it is interesting. But as I said, the other thing is that a lot of properties from the contacts that I have, they're still getting strong inquiry. So the inquiry is still there. People are a little bit more reserved. And the other observation also, Martin, from my conversations with my colleagues, the selling agents, is that because there's a lot of agents out there, they're basically blowing wind up the backside, and they're thinking that their expectations are very high, but for agents that want to win the listing by, as we say, buy the listing by trying to tell them that by overpricing the property. Vendors are sitting with high expectations, and this is a period where we could end up seeing a lot more properties being sold post auction campaigns as opposed to pre-auction campaigns or at the auction, because of the high expectations, and vendors are going to learn the hard way to lower their expectations. But again, I don't particularly blame the vendors as much as I blame the selling agents for blowing wind up the backside in the first place.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we've discussed that a few times over the months. So the other point I'd make is a lot of the stuff coming on the market is not necessarily A-class property as well. There's still a lot of ex-investment properties and all those sorts of things coming through. Let's just briefly look at Melbourne. So on the 26th, we had 28,098. Again, houses definitely to the fore. Jump forward to the 2nd of September, 28,287. So the story continues. And if you compare that with last year, 23,910 on the 4th of September 2023. So you can see there that the truth of the matter when it comes to Melbourne is that listings are up and listings are continuing. And I think that's quite fascinating when you actually look at what the story is and what it might mean. The truth is that the Melbourne market is definitely struggling, and prices, as I said earlier on, are continuing to drift lower. The supply is continuing to rise. But again, I want to emphasize, Edwin, the quality of a lot of the property coming on the market ain't great.
No, and the other observation there, Martin, is from same time last year, you find that the apartment listings are pretty much on par to this year's, yet the housing listings have gone up by 3,000 thereabouts, and the land. Don't forget these numbers. Whether you look at the domain numbers or whether you look at REA numbers, they also include land envelopes, and there's been almost 1,000 more land envelopes released that people just don't want to buy because of the cost of construction. But yeah, the freestanding homes are certainly climbing But it's interesting how the apartments have pretty much stayed on par over the last month or so, from previous year to this year.
Yeah, and of course, the number of new finished apartments in Melbourne is continuing to decay. New approvals are down and finishings are down as well. So that's also another factor in here. We look at the Brisbane story, rather different actually. On the 26th, we had 3,725, and wait for it, on the 2nd of September, 3,689. So that's a bit of a different trajectory. A bit of a fall. So we know that the Brisbane market is very tight, and as I discussed earlier, the trends are that prices are still rising quite fast. Although, by the way, mortgage stress is also quite strong there too. And just if we jump forward to the auctions, just to give us a quick sounding there, the auction listings are still rising. The number cleared is still relatively, low, I would say, relative to previous years. And so we're seeing a lot of stuff coming to auction, but then not necessarily being seen to clear at auction. So there's some interesting dynamics there too.
Yeah, I think in general, look, from on face value, I think people are wary of in a lot of areas with auction campaigns.
Yep.
We've got. It's a little bit early days to say, but it's going to be interesting to see how the numbers hold up, because when people are enthusiastic about selling, you'll see those numbers climb. But from that sort of trend that I'm watching, I think a bit of shine's come off that ball. And vendors are weary. Or then again, maybe sellers are watching our show, Martin, and they're taking, they're approaching the sales campaign with a lot of caution.
Could well be. Well, we know that we have some really smart viewers and followers, and they are not going to be misled. Quickly on the rentals, just to round out the picture. So on the 26th in Sydney, 12,325. If we jump forward to the next week, the 2nd of September, 12,110. So you can see there that the same trends are continuing with a slight fall. And in Melbourne, on the 26th, 10,757. The following week, the 2nd, 10,621. So in fact, the listings for rent are falling in both of those areas. And I have a theory that part of that is that in some cases, those rental properties are being taken off the market and are being sold. And so whilst you could argue that may give somebody like a first-time buyer a chance to buy something, often those properties as they come on are actually ones that need a lot of attention, will need significant maintenance and other work. And we called out earlier on, the costs of getting that maintenance done is pretty excessive. So I think we're for an interesting evolution of the markets over the next little while. And I just wanted to highlight something really fascinating, which I found in the articles this week. There were some interesting contrasts. So there was this one: mortgage customers stash cash in offset. So the banks are claiming that some people are actually saving a lot. And I see that in my surveys. So we've been talking a lot about mortgage stress and all those things. A lot of people are still saving quite hard because they're worried about what's coming on later. And the other interesting observation was an interesting article about the way that the rich are able to actually buy through blind trusts and through corporate structures and those sorts of things. And there is some commitment from the Labor side to try and actually decode some of the beneficial ownership registers in Australia, but I'm not sure whether that will play out. So I thought that was an interesting contrast between, the mortgage stress story, which of course we've been highlighting, and the fact at the top end that there are people using complex structures and a lot of people with mortgages who are actually still able to save. So again, it's important not to generalize too far. Now, talking about tips and observations, you've got a really important one this week, Edwin.
Yeah, look, we all go through different bouts in life, and I think with the economic pressures that we're facing around housing, mortgages or rents, the uncertainties, a lot of us are walking around with a lot of weight on our shoulders, and that weight translates to, sadly, in a lot of cases, translates into depression, and into abuse of sorts, alcohol, drug, whatever. I mean, it's so. Look, my tip is, as I've been talking to some people over the week, and also myself reaching out to a family member, is, sometimes we don't have the means to help them financially. We may not have the means ourselves to help them financially, or to stretch out as the WeChat chat would say, a red envelope with a bit of money in there to help them out through life, and to get over those struggles. But hugs are free, and hugs go a long way. And as I said, and I in a lot of the cases, and a lot of the times, I wear my sleeve on my shoulder, my sleeve on my
Heart on
on
your
my arm
sleeve.
here, and what was that? My heart on my sleeve. Last week I also had to reach out to one of my sisters, and just to get over some uneasiness, that I was going through, and she just simply said, come over and I'll give you a hug, because sometimes that's what we need. Yeah, we need it, others need it, but I'm sort of saying more to those that are out there, and by all means, I'm not going through any financial difficulties. Mine was more of an emotional need from my childhood. But with a lot of people that I've been coming across, and what they're facing because of the issues, as I said, around the rental stresses and the mortgage stresses, and what they're doing without, or don't be scared to just reach out and give them a hug, and also don't be scared to accept a hug. I'm one of those people. It's that I've had to learn to extend a hug in order for me to accept a hug as well. Like that's just the way I've been brought up, and it's, I tell you what, it felt good getting that hug from my sister, because and that's what keeps us going. So yeah, hugs is the new currency for the week, for this week, folks. So reach out and hug someone, but be careful.
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful who you hug. But the point there is, I think, two observations. One is that there's no inflation on hugs, right? One hug equals one hug, which is good. So it keeps its value. And the other is, I've learned this coming back into the community here now, where I'm now sort of putting roots down, and where I've reconnected with family and friends from some years ago. And it amazes me how you can pick up and reconnect. And the human contact is a really important part of survival. And I think in the current environment, when there are so many pressures on people, particularly financial pressures, understanding that there's a non-financial currency that's also quite useful, I think is really worth underscoring. So, everyone, I want to say thank you very much for bringing that to the surface, and sometimes just taking time to be with somebody and expressing a little bit of concern and support is worth its weight in gold.
That's how they get us, right? And I'm not being conspiratorial here, but that's how they get us. That's how it's divide and conquer. It's separate us, keep us isolated, and keep us away from each other, from that human contact and that humanity that politicians just don't have. The majority of the politicians just don't have that humanity, and this is what this whole thing, the world has turned into, an inhumane arena where it's just dog eat dog, and we're not looking after our fellow person, where it's all about me, myself, and I, and nobody can deny. And that's a sad thing, and hence the reason why I wanted to share this tip today, because let's keep on fighting the battle, and let's stay united, and and supportive. It's all about support. I mean, yes, it's a hug, but it's about that support structure that in those communities that we are building through DFA, through Walk the World, through the Monday Night Rants, through other social means. But we still need that touch from people of like mind.
Absolutely, Edwin. Well, it's a very important point, and I think it's worth underscoring that hugs is a good currency. Thank you very much. Look forward to catching up with you again next week, when, of course, there will be more stupidity to explore across the markets and everything else. But we'll hopefully make some more sense for people. And cheers to all our followers and supporters. If you've got questions, observations, feel free to drop them in the comments below or share on Twitter. And Edwin, I look forward to catching up with you again next week. And here is a virtual hug.
Likewise. Good luck, Martin.
Take care. Bye-bye.